When I was in college, community college, Pasadena City College, represent. I took as many film courses as I could, and also on the weekends I would do like whatever odd jobs I could find in filmmaking, a PA, a grip, a makeup assistant, etc., etc. And so one of my jobs, I ended up being a makeup assistant on a film called Tears from Heaven. I don't think it ever came out. And there I met a young man named Dave Larsen, who was the writer, producer, director, actor of Tears from Heaven. And he realized that he probably had a piece of shit on his hands and wasn't going to be able to sell the movie. And he had all these short ends. And short ends back in the day when we used to shoot on film are 35 millimeter, whatever's left over, might only be 2 minutes of film, might be 3 minutes of film or whatever. But he had a stack of them. And I don't know if it was his idea or my idea, but someone said you could probably make a movie with all the short ends that you have from the one that you didn't make. Or that you can't sell. And so I, being just a hungry filmmaker, was like, I make movies, I'm a director, let me show you some of my stuff. And so I showed Dave Larsen a lot of my high school shorts, a lot of my college shorts, and he gave me an opportunity. He said, you know what, if you want to collaborate on this together, I write and star in it, you can help me write and direct. And that collaboration of two 22-year-olds amounted in Killers, my first feature film.
With that lingering flower, the one there with the eyes of an angel and lips of a god, the one that gives you the apparent strength of nobility.
So the writing process was interesting. I'd say a lot of it was Dave Larsen's idea, and he was largely responsible for the characters and the dialogue. Now, Dave writes a little more poetic and flowery than I do.
Can you hear it, Charlie? The pounding of the bed frame, the screws turning, bolts falling, sweat angels in the pants. The pant, Charlie. Try to be quiet so no one will know we're fucking pants.
Inspired, man. Fucking A poetry.
So that was kind of a lot of perhaps some bashing of heads and ideas and styles that I was more interested in the horror and the action of it. He was very dead set on having these monologues, some of which are in the cut that is on this disc, and some are not, and thankfully are on the editing room floor. But but overall, we kind of contributed. We have our own different styles in there for sure. The character of Odessa James is 100% Dave Larsen and truly him, and then I would say the cannibals and weird violence and things like that is probably me. And I think overall it was kind of an interesting combination, and I think that's probably what kind of made it work, is just the kind of two different mindsets kind of collaborating on something. In some ways, Killers is a little bit ahead of the curve because there was been a whole wave of movies that were, there's something worse in the house that you've home invaded. But, I can't take any credit for originality. I actually, if anything, I credit From Dusk Till Dawn, which I don't think had come out when we made the movie, but it was either just about to. We certainly knew that was kind of the thing, that there was, half the movie is one way and there was a turn. And I think that style just kind of appealed to us. I think that was sort of part of the fun, was directing a movie into a certain thing and then having it make a sharp left and go in a completely different direction. I think it was probably too sharp a turn for some people, but, again, we were young and it was very experimental at the time, so I thought it was kind of cool. But it is definitely, I think the whole movie is definitely a product of its time. I think the influence of Tarantino crime films and, Natural Born Killers and things like that, I think certainly are apparent in the film. I think back then that was kind of cool to talk about movies within movies.
This is the absolute biggest piece of crap. Free Willy, Charles, you should die now.
You know what the only redeemable moment of Free Willy is, Charlie? Michael Madsen smoking cigarettes.
It was kind of like a wave that was kind of happening at the time, and I think Killers definitely, as I kind of watch it and think back on it, definitely, you know, had a lot of those tropes and stuff that was being done at the time. But oh well, you know, it marks the time that it was made, and I think that's kind of cool.
You know, I wanted the colonial house, and you said no. And so then I wanted the adobe, and you said nothing Spanish. And instead, you picked the only house with a fucking dungeon.
Finding places to shoot the film was actually relatively easy because we were poor and all we could do was shoot at our parents' house. So the beginning of the film is shot at my parents' house, and then the majority of the film is shot at Dave's house. That was an interesting experience because fun fact that we did not know at the time, you need a permit to shoot in your own house. I didn't know that. At least in Los Angeles County you do. We had a lot of violence and guns and things that we were blasting off.
Hi!
We were thankfully safe about it. We did have a good gun wrangler on set that made sure that we were as safe as could be about it. But we were a bunch of kids just shooting shotguns in our living rooms. You know, sometimes the police were called out and we'd have to hide the guns and things like that. But overall, the neighborhood was mostly understanding. I think there was one neighbor who didn't like us very much and would constantly call the police on us.
Son, the gunshot came from that house. Right there. It came from the Ryan house.
It was very much, you know, a homegrown, backyard do-it-yourself movie. So it was very much, what do you have? What can you get? What can you borrow? You know, the extras were all our friends. I play a SWAT member several times, you know, and certainly there was a lot of recycling of extras and props and things like that because, again, it was such a limited budget. The movie was made for about $100,000, really, which is not a lot now, and it was not a lot then.
Well, I guess, you know you've maxed out your Visa card.
And, you know, that was shot on 35, so we had to take it to the lab and, you know, and negative costs and negative cut and stuff like that. So in the end, I think by the time we got into Sundance, we had to, you know, kind of, fix it up properly. I think it ended up being a little closer to 200,000 when it was all said and done. But at least the version that we submitted and the version that, you know, we considered complete was about $100,000. So.
In a God of freedom, honey, don't you know that I'm loving you?
I always like opening the movies with kind of big dramatic slow motion sequences of violence, usually to some sort of known song. Originally when we cut it, because Dave was a big fan of The Doors and the song The End, you know, we felt like that seems like the right song to start it with. The Doors disagreed and did not allow us to have The End. And so one of the things that kind of irks me, and, you know, it's just like live and learn, and we were kids when we did it, is that back then, you know, the negative was cut to The Doors, you know, and you could literally, you know, like Dark Side of the Moon and Wizard of Oz, you can literally start the end and the opening of the film and it'll kind of line up, or it should line up. But when the movie was released, we couldn't afford it, and Inagata Devita by Iron Butterfly was just kind of, I would call it just slapped in. And a lot of people love that opening and love Inagata Devita. To me, it always is just wrong. You know, it's like, oh, it's not cut to that. That's just not what's supposed to be there. But you know, that's what's there. So, you know, it's me who has to kind of just get used to it and live with it. But that was the reason, you know, but it's a mistake I try not to make again. I've certainly You know, it's tough. Sometimes you really get married to a song that you have in your temp, and you know, and your budget or the artist may think otherwise, and you just have to kind of live with it. So, secure your song first. That would be my advice. The makeup effects were created by a very talented gentleman named Eric Fox, who was a contestant on Face Off long after Killers, but this was one of Eric's first films. And, you know, it was just your classic. I think all of us lived with our parents at the time. We were all very young, you know, basically just out of being teenagers. You know, it was a lot of, you know, bake it in your mom's oven and stuff like that. I wonder if Eric had a shop at that point. I'm not sure, but you know, it was very do-it-yourself. But he did a great job considering that we had such limited resources. And Eric's always been a good resource when you need, you know, a head to blow up or a body part or whatever. Eric's always been fantastic. So you know, so much thanks to him. He also created the Bob character.
Who the fuck is Bob?
Bob, in my opinion, is the Ryan family's other son that they keep in the basement. There's a lot of confusion as to what is in the basement, the dwellers and Bob, and what that all means. I don't really know. It was just kind of weird, and we just kind of like the idea that there was just a kind of underground world that lived under this house or whatever, and really at the end you find out under the entire town. You know, I guess it's kind of explained. It makes more sense in the director's cut, which you'll see, because the ending you see that the entire town are cannibals and it's not just this family, and it's fucked up. So we're just to believe that there is just kind of this underground, I guess, prison underneath the entire city or town that holds some of the more reprehensible cannibals or whatever. Something really incredible happened with this film that I don't think would happen now, which is that it got into the Sundance Film Festival. And what I mean by that is festivals are very different than they were. This movie was 1997. We literally were, you know, just some kids that took our VHS tape, filled out the application, sent a $50 check, and sent it to the Sundance Institute. Never did I think that we were going to get a call and get into the festival. But to my great surprise, one day I got a call, and it was Jeff Gilmore of the Sundance Institute, and he was the head programmer at the time, and they said, we'd like to put it in the midnight category, and it changed my life. I mean, The God's Honest Truth is probably the hottest my career has ever been. Was at that time when I was 22 and just had, you know, a film in Sundance, and, you know, all the agencies wanted to talk to me, all the studios wanted to talk to me. Doesn't happen now, but you know, but at the time it was amazing, and you know, all of the opportunities that you know happened after that is because of that, you know, life-changing thing of getting into Sundance for The Convent. I you know, obviously it's impossible to say if that didn't happen how life would have turned out. I'd like to believe I'd still be making movies because it's just in me. It's just what I do. But, you know, I mean, that step, you know, informed and created every other door that opened and every other opportunity that came my way. There'd be no Convent, there'd be no Grave Dancers, there'd be no Big Ass Spider probably if I didn't get into Sundance. So I am greatly in debt for that opportunity, and it was amazing. It was really, you know, an amazing experience to happen, and still, you know, one of the highlights of my life.
Damn, I feel good.
The release it got afterwards was relatively small. I think there was a lot of interest at the festival, but then, you know, the buyers kind of decide like, this is not the next big thing or whatever. So eventually a company called Alpine Pictures picked it up, and released it theatrically, somewhat. I think in like 12 major cities, if I remember correctly, and mainly midnight screenings, which is kind of the crowd for this kind of thing. And Alpine also produced my second film, The Convent. So so that was a wonderful thing that at the time that we found each other and were able to allow me to create more stuff for them. So that's a rare opportunity when you get to do that, when a company says, hey, what do you want to do next? We have this film, and that led to The Convent, which is great. And even though it came out just in a small theatrical limited release here and only on VHS, which was very sad for me because it was just right before DVDs were a thing. It was still the 90s. But in Germany and in Europe, it came out theatrically and ended up having kind of a big following, particularly in Germany. In fact, there was some rappers who named themselves Mike Mendez and Mr. 187. They're still around, apparently, and they kind of formed their whole aesthetic off of Killers. The kind of white boy thugs with guns and and hoodies and sweatshirts or whatever, but it was largely inspired by Killers. Anyway, but that was kind of a thrill, and still to this day, I feel that Europe embraced the film much more than the U.S. did, and I think it had a far greater life overseas than it did here. So we are here in beautiful Glendale, California, and this is the house that we shot Killers in. So I'll tell you a little sad history about this house. One of the ways that we financed the movie, besides credit cards and our own personal savings and loans, was that Dave's dad mortgaged this house, and that kind of paid for it. Unfortunately, it was not paid back, and the bank foreclosed on it, and the house was lost, largely due to this movie. And that is a bummer, and it is very sad.
This was my end. An ending of painless peace for a boy who longed to see death.
Another tragedy about this house and the Larsen family is that Dave Larsen, the star and writer of this film and the person who conceived it, passed away shortly after making the film. I would say maybe within 5 or 6 years. Dave had a lot of demons, and unfortunately they got the better of him. And it's one of those things that I can't tell you how much it would mean to Dave to know that this movie is still being watched, that it's getting re-released, that it's getting a Blu-ray. That I know that would mean a lot to him, and so that is kind of a very special thing about this disc, and that the movie is being preserved and remembered, because it's very easy for a small film, especially a film as small as this, to get lost. There's so many films out there's so many things, and it's so easy to lose those elements, but I'm very thankful to companies like Multicom and Synapse who scanned this and felt it was worthy of a 4K restoration, and thank God. And I know for myself, and I know, speaking for Dave, I know how much it would mean to him. So anyway, but God bless Dave. My life wouldn't be the same without him, to be honest, and my life wouldn't be the same without making this movie.
Jesus Christ Almighty on a goddamn crutch.